Good morning, everyone, and croeso. Welcome to our Beyond the Mic session for Wales Climate Week 2025, Housing from Policy to Place, Making Net Zero Homes a Reality. We're live on AirMeet with real-time translation and recording. Please add any questions to the chat box and we'll get to them later in the session. Please could you also add your organisation, as we only see names. I'm Jo Ullah, a Sustainability Technical Officer at Powys County Council, and it's an absolute privilege to chair this session as part of a week dedicated to accelerating climate action across Wales. My own work is focused on improving the energy efficiency and sustainability of social housing in Powys. Over the past year, I've led our council efforts to retrofit our housing stock, working closely with tenants, local contractors and partners across Wales. A key part in our approach, has been utilising the Optimised Retrofit programme, which is designed to help us meet the ambitious targets set out in the Welsh Housing Quality Standard and the wider net zero transition outlined in the Welsh Government's latest discussion paper. Today's session is all about moving from policy to practical action, turning big ambitions into real change on the ground. We'll explore the challenges, the opportunities and the practical steps we can take to make net zero homes a reality in Wales. Let me introduce you to our panel of experts, each bringing a unique perspective and wealth of experience. Our first panellist is Abigail Ward, Policy Manager at Energy Saving Trust. Abigail leads on policy and incentives to help households in Wales retrofit their homes and improve energy efficiency in a fair and affordable way. She brings deep insight into the role of electrification, consumer engagement, and the wider co-benefits of energy policy, like lower bills and improved health. Abigail, thank you for joining us and sharing your expertise. Next, we have Simon Minette, Managing Director at Challoch Energy. Simon is an expert in renewable energy deployment and decentralised energy systems. They'll be sharing lessons from European experience and exploring how combined heat and power, as well as local energy solutions, can help Wales reduce emissions and improve efficiency across our housing stock. Simon, we're delighted to have you with us today. Apologies, I'm just getting a note on the side. Our third panellist is Steve Cranston, Project Lead at Tai Arweiniad. Steve's work focuses on off-site manufactured low-carbon homes and how these can help Wales meet its net zero housing targets while delivering affordability and quality. He's also passionate about leveraging local supply chains and circular economy principles to create sustainable housing and green jobs within Welsh communities. Steve, thank you for being part of this important conversation. So, Wales Climate Week is about collective action, bringing together government, industry, communities and individuals to accelerate the transition to net zero. This year, housing is in the spotlight, and for good reason. Our homes are more than just buildings. They're the foundation for health, well-being and community. Yet they're also a major source of carbon emissions, and many of us are feeling the pinch of rising energy costs. The Welsh Government's latest discussion paper, Enabling the People of Wales to Deliver and Benefit from the Net Zero Transition in 2026 to 2030 and beyond, sets out the urgent need for action and the opportunities ahead. It highlights that while Wales has made significant progress in reducing emissions, especially in power and industry, the next phase must focus on sectors that touch our daily lives, like housing. The paper calls for rapid decarbonisation, fairness and social justice, and a strong role for people and communities in shaping and delivering change. The Talks for Tomorrow podcast, which many of you may have listened to ahead of this session, featured Sarah Elias from Nesta in conversation with Stefan Powell. Their discussion explored the practical challenges and opportunities of decarbonising homes in Wales, highlighting the scale of the task, the importance of community engagement and the need for innovative solutions to achieve net zero. So Abigail, Steve, Simon, what are your key takeaways from the Talks for Tomorrow podcast and how do they resonate with your work on housing, energy and achieving net zero in Wales? Who would like to go first?
Shall I start?
Go on, Simon.
Yeah. So one of the projects we're involved in is called Net Zero Terrace Streets, which is looking to decarbonise terraced housing. There's 6 million terraced houses across the UK and a reasonable number in Wales. The big challenge for those housing is there's a lack of space within the house. There's a lack of space outside the house to put heat pumps. So what we're looking at there is a shared ground loop with boreholes in the street and then ground source heat pumps in the house. Big challenges in that process, and it was highlighted in the podcast, is the fabric of the houses is often quite poor. This is not mostly social housing. This is mostly housing which is owned, either private rented sector or owned occupied. A lot of the houses have been modified drastically over their lives, not necessarily building standards. And then the final challenge really is a lot of the terraced housing, especially in the Welsh valleys, is there's lots of other social issues with people who live in those houses, poverty and all that comes with that process. And actually engagement in this sort of process is very difficult because they're more worried about feeding themselves or putting clothes on their kids' back or whatever it may be. So it's finding a way through that process, making it as simple as possible, and making it as so there's no upfront cost in that process. And now that's a real challenge, and we can come back to that a bit later maybe. But these houses don't necessarily fully pay their fuel bills at the moment. They're often damp because they don't heat them properly, and yet we're trying to get them to have warm, comfortable houses, and that doesn't come completely for free, of course. So that's a big challenge in that process. So I'll probably stop there for now and let others talk. But that is a day-to-day challenge with that sector of the housing stock.
Abigail, would you like to come in on that as well?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. In a similar vein, I think my reflection from the podcast was when Sarah said that we must take kind of a twin track approach when thinking about decarbonising homes, because we can decarbonise homes as well as reduce fuel poverty. I think that's a really important strand in all climate change policies, to make sure that people are really at the heart of the policies that we're rolling out. And one of the programmes that we run is called Nest, which we run on behalf of the Welsh Government, which is a scheme which has been around since 2011 and installs free home energy upgrades for those on low incomes or in fuel poverty. So making sure that their homes are well insulated to lower their bills, and also installs solar panels and heat pumps as well, to kind of show that you can also achieve decarbonisation as well as fuel poverty. As we know, our over-reliance in general in the UK on fossil fuels and using gas boilers has really driven up our energy prices. So making sure that households have well-insulated homes that also are connected to renewable systems is a really important way to kind of future-proof those houses and make sure that they're part of the solution as we kind of go forward. And yeah, as Simon said, we can talk more about kind of the challenges to that. But I think for me, that was a really important point that Sarah made in that podcast.
Steve, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, just not to repeat. I mean, I think Abigail's right. It's the twin, isn't it? It's the twin track. Social justice and climate. We can't do one. We've got to do them both at the same time. I really liked how Sarah framed the discussion as being about a huge opportunity for supply chain, for contractors, for skilling in the Welsh economy, and that's how it should be played out. That's a massive opportunity which we've got to seize. I was actually really inspired by two of the examples you gave, and I'm going to go and check them out afterwards. One was around how you kind of raise awareness around this whole agenda and this idea of, go see a heat pump near you. I'll bring that into my work. And the other one was around how you incentivize this, particularly around the skilling agenda and the idea of, training up heat pump installers. And then if they go to the training, they get a heat pump in their own homes. So they are actually living this. That's what we need, kind of really passionate people who kind of get this. It's not a theoretical job. They actually understand these issues. And I think if you had those kind of tradespeople out there, they would be really, really effective. So I really like that a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, one of the things I took away from it was the community engagement. And I think, Abigail, Simon, sorry, you said about people not heating their homes, and I think that's something, with the fuel prices at the moment, it's that, I hate the term educating, more informing people of what heating or not heating a home does to their properties, does to their buildings, is something that we need to really push on the community engagement. Thank you all for that. I'm going to move on to the main questions. Now, I've got 3 main questions that I want to ask you all. So you can bounce in together or we can do it individually, but let's see what we get from these. So the first one is, how can we rapidly accelerate the transition to low carbon heating in homes across Wales, bearing in mind the relative influence of the Welsh and UK governments? Let's go to you first, Steve.
Well, I'm working in the new build space, so thinking about social housing and thinking about the need to address the housing crisis. And we need to accelerate this. We've got 100,000 families, people living, families in temporary accommodation on waiting lists. Tonight, something like 3,000 families will be in temporary accommodation. So it's really urgent. And what you have in Wales is about 40 developing social landlords for councils and in housing associations. And the key, I think, to accelerating, getting to a better place is to go together. Collaboration has got to be the key driver here. So thinking about new space, the work we're doing with the Ynghyd project is looking at how you can really unlock the benefits from an aggregated pipeline of new homes. And when you do that, all these possibilities come up. If we keep working in silos and just doing individual project by project, I think we're missing the trick, and we will not get the systemic change we need. So collaboration is a key one for me.
Okay, thank you for that, Abigail.
So for me, I guess it's looking at what the Welsh government could do, because like you said, there is kind of a limit on some of the kind of powers that the Welsh government has. But I think as Sarah kind of touched on in the podcast, there's the kind of planning rules that are really restrictive in Wales, which aren't the same in Scotland and have recently been abolished in England. It's really welcome that there's been a consultation to remove the 3 metre planning rule that's in Wales that has really affected, I guess, especially urban homes being able to benefit from schemes like the boiler upgrade scheme, which gives households £7,500 towards the cost of a heat pump. But because of the quite restrictive planning rules, that's something that the Welsh government could quite easily kind of quickly replace and kind of get rid of, so that households can more easily install heat pumps. And then I guess from a I get another kind of Welsh government point of view, we've seen some really good loan schemes come in Wales recently. So the Development Bank of Wales are offering the Green Homes Wales loan scheme, which is an interest-free loan, and there's also a grant offer as well for homes. And obviously it was only launched last year, so I'm really keen to kind of see how it's been doing. But that's a really important aspect of this, because the upfront costs of heat pumps are still really challenging for people, and even with the boiler upgrade scheme, heat pumps are still more expensive than what the grant kind of allows them. So having that bridging finance is really important to help those households that don't have that upfront capital to be able to pay for the heat pump kind of upfront. So that's a really interesting initiative that I'd really like to see kind of what's been going on, so we can kind of see what lessons can be learned to go on further. Because we also run Home Energy Scotland in Scotland, which is the national advice service in Scotland, and also have a grant and loan scheme which is offered as part of that advice service, and it's really, really impactful on getting households to act and install heat pumps and different types of renewable technologies and installation as well. So yeah, I think that's a really great initiative, and I think definitely should kind of be built on and learnt from as we go forward.
Thank you, Abigail. Simon, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I have a couple of points. One is relatively simple and the other one's much more complex. The first one is the EPC rating assessments done on houses. We've seen a number of people who have a C rating for their house, and then you go to the house and you realise it's nowhere near a C. It's a D or an E, but it precludes them from certain support measures. So actually, the Welsh government could just lift that and say, if you're C or below, you could get support rather than D or below, if you see what I mean. So that would be really helpful in that post. The other point is much more complex, and it's linking health and access to benefits and warm hubs and all the other bits and bobs that come together there with energy. And actually the conversation with communities generally doesn't start by talking about energy. It's a thing that switches people off. They believe they can't do anything about it because they're told by government every time there's a price cap that the average bill is X, and a lot of people internalize that as that is our bill, which of course is wrong, but that doesn't matter. So they don't think they can do very much about energy, but there's lots of other needs they have. So actually tying the voluntary sector up with doing retrofit work, etc., the more we can get integration there, the more chance we actually have of getting into communities. And my focus has been much more on the non-social housing sector, because that's the real. I'm not saying social housing is not a challenge; it is, of course, but actually getting into the 70% of Welsh houses which are not social housing is a big prize if you can get there, but it's really, really, really difficult to get there. So trying to tie all these things together would be something that it would be really good if Welsh Government could find a way of having some sort of integrated programme there, getting away from, we've already talked about the silos, but it's not just silos in little bits, it's a silo across the whole of government.
Thank you, Simon. My next question actually was, how can we seize the opportunities? And you just answered that
Sorry.
in that one question. So thank you so much. Abigail, Steve, do you have any thoughts on how we can seize these opportunities? Abigail, you said about all the schemes available, the grant schemes. We haven't really touched on social housing yet, but obviously there are different schemes for social landlords, but then we've got the private sector too. How can we seize these opportunities to get in and get moving?
I guess from a retrofit perspective, as I alluded to earlier, we run the Nest scheme in Wales, which provides free advice tailored to households of any tenure. So any kind of household can come and ask Nest about what they could do to upgrade their homes. And then for those who are on lower incomes, they could be eligible for the home energy improvement package to bring down their energy bills. I guess it ties back to, I guess, seizing the opportunity of making sure that there's that twin track approach to fuel poverty and decarbonisation, and making sure that households, like you said, Simon, people aren't aware of how they can properly reduce their energy bills and also make their homes warmer, less damp. So advice services are a really important part of informing people and just having that conversation with people of what is their situation, who's living in their house and what is right for them. So I think that's the really important part of the advice services that we offer, is that kind of tailored approach, because a one size fits all approach simply won't work. And we know Welsh housing stock is amongst the worst in Europe, and there's also lots of different types of houses as well. So you really need that individualistic approach to each household. And so I'd say that opportunities to engage through advice is really important, and also through communications. So tailoring communications is really important. And I know that Climate Action Wales has been really kind of influential in getting the conversation going amongst the public. I read their evaluation of the scheme since kind of 2023 and 2024, and it's really, you can see the impact it's had on people's kind of knowledge of what they can do around their home. But I think it's that next step of people are aware of it, but now what can they do? And I think advice services like Nest can really drive people to act on that information they've got. So yeah, I think that's one of the ways that we can continue to seize on the opportunity.
Thank you.
Jo,
Steve,
can I come back in just for a second on one thing? One of the key aspects that we find is people don't trust anybody. They've had door-to-door salesmen promising the earth and they're not delivering. They hear stories like the Arbed scheme where external wall insulation went horribly wrong, and actually pulling together case studies and actually having the councils integrate that in the outreach they have towards the wider communities, and the council's actually believing that the housing stock within their authority is part of their asset base, starts to break down that sort of them and us process. So I think that's quite important. I'm not sure how to put that into words more, in detail, if you see what I mean, but I think as a concept it's there.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, just to come in on that as well. Some of our we do an approach to our advice services is that our partnership development managers at Nest work really closely with kind of local community organisations and partner organisations to kind of help reach those vulnerable households as much as possible. Because I think, Simon, like you said, there are some kind of households that only have that small network of organisations that they trust. So our kind of development managers really try and integrate themselves into the community to try and get in touch with other health organisations or kind of health boards and food banks and things to try and widen that reach. But you're right, it's that trusted element that's really important to build as well.
Totally agree with both comments. Thank you, Steve.
No, and just to say, if you haven't got trust, you're pushing a boulder uphill. So it is absolutely spot on. In terms of the new build space, the new home space, I mean, in Wales, we've actually had consistently stable and high levels of investment in social housing. Last year over £300 million was invested. That's been the trend, for many years. And I suppose the opportunity we've really got to get a head around is how we actually use that investment in terms of an economy of scale and an economy of repetition. And Ynghyd, what we've been trying to do here is to think about how do you make it simpler to build more and better homes. So we're pushing it really three areas. There's kind of getting consistency around house designs and house layouts. There are only so many ways you can lay out a 3-bedroom house or a 2-bedroom flat. And if everyone just keeps doing their own thing, it makes it very difficult for a supply chain to respond in a really kind of consistent way. The second thing is to align around clearer performance standards. We've obviously got Welsh Development's quality requirements standards to hit. But it's interesting, our projects and other lands not in Ynghyd are aligning very closely around some additional standards which really measure the right stuff, particularly around energy use and fuel bills for residents. So, Ynghyd, so the first one, we've developed a pattern book, and on the for landlords to use, and we've just started seeing the first schemes coming through now at planning stage. The performance standards, we could look at a baseline and a kind of an advanced position, so that people think about this being a journey to go on. The baseline standard, for those in the room who know it, is the carbon light standard run by the AECB, which has got very good performance around energy use and particularly at times. And then the advanced standard is passive house classic standard. And in both those cases, there's a kind of a whole community to support landlords and supply chain to get their head around what this means, but also a quality assurance process, so that we really do address this thing which we call the performance gap. You say you build something, but in practice it doesn't perform as it says it would, and that speaks to a much bigger problem we've got in the country around a productivity crisis in the construction industry and a skills crisis. The two are obviously connected, and so if you're providing a more consistent ask as clients, as landlords to the sector, we're giving the chance for contractors and heat pump installers to do something and then do it again and get better, and do it again and get better and better and better. And this then leads to the last point, which we've got to really see, is because I mentioned before, we've had consistently high levels of investment in social housing, but you go to talk to supply chain and you say, this is investment out there. They say, we cannot see it easily. That pipeline is not visible to us. And we as a country have got to get much better about making the pipeline of good investments in this kind of key kind of transition economy part of our world, to make this more visible. And so we understand, what it is, those, whether it's contractors or architects or in our case, we're using timber a lot, the forests, how we can start getting the right timber in place. This must be visible, much far more visible. And then lastly, on the issue about sort of the whole trust business, there's a whole piece of work around resident engagement and that kind of co-creation work we've got to do there. And I think that's a big issue, and we're working on that as well.
Thank you, Steve. My next question was, what are the barriers and how might they be removed? And you've just answered that for me in a nutshell. So thank you so much. I'm going to get into the questions I have for you individually now, as I don't want to go over on time. So Simon, what can we learn from European experiences in renewable energy deployment that could inform Wales's approach to scaling up clean energy in homes and communities?
That's a really good question. I think there are examples in France and Spain and Austria of one-stop shops. And we tried that in Bridgend last year. It's quite challenging. You need council support, and you need lots of council support. It's not just a sort of light touch. And the one-stop shop then has to deal with energy. It has to deal with the way, the health of the house, etc., etc. So it's not just one thing. The supply chain's been touched upon here quite a lot. There's a chicken and egg problem, I think. Heat pump installers won't get trained unless there's heat pumps to do, and there's not enough heat pumps to actually train the installers, and the colleges struggle with that process. And it's not just heat pumps, it's lots of the green jobs are a bit like that. So we do a lot of work with Bridgend College, and it takes 5 years for a course to go from a germ to reality, and you've got people coming out the other end of it, and that's too late. We already need them now. So some European countries are much better at that long-term thinking, that long-term planning. Denmark's always been very good, and it's always been held up as a great example. We tend to flip-flop between things a lot, and I think we could learn some lessons from others. But the one-stop shop idea, I think, is something that could be applied council by council. This is a very local issue for me. You could have a whole Wales thing, but what's relevant in North Wales is not relevant in South Wales, and vice versa. So and people won't go to North Wales to see an example when they live in South Wales. So it has to be within a few kilometres of where they live that this is relevant. So a network around that would be really good, and that would be built on what goes on in Picardy in France, in the Basque Country in Spain, in Upper Austria, etc. So there are lots and lots of examples of that. We'd have to, of course, make it suit the Welsh context, but that would definitely help that process. Outside that, you've always got to be a little bit careful translating things from one country to another, because they don't always work. But consistency for me is the bit that has been lacking over many years. It's not just a government cycle process, it's also the annual budgeting process mitigates against that process, etc., etc. So.
Thank you. Thank you, Simon. Abigail, we've already touched on this, but from a policy and consumer perspective, how can we best enable households to retrofit their homes and improve energy efficiency in a fair and affordable way for both social housing and private sector?
Sorry, can you still hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes. So, sorry, it cut out slightly. I think sorry, do you mind repeating the question?
No, of course. So I just said, from a policy and consumer perspective, how can we best enable households to retrofit their homes and improve energy efficiency in a fair and affordable way? We've talked about the interest-free loans. Is there anything else that you think, from a policy and consumer perspective, we could be doing? Oh, I think we might be losing you, Abigail. Do you want me? I'll ask a question to Steve, and I'll come back to you. I think we lost you for a second. Okay. Steve, my question to you is, how can off-site manufactured low-carbon homes help Wales meet its net zero housing targets while delivering affordability and quality? Now, I know you've already said a lot of this already. You've answered my questions before I've asked them, but anything else to add on that?
Just to say that the shift is really needed. I mean, we have got this crisis of productivity in the construction sector, and not just in housing, it's across the piece. My granddad was a plasterer, and someone said, well, if he sort of landed on the building site, a few years ago, he wouldn't have been out of place really. He could have picked things up really quickly. The shift from traditional construction to off-site is the key thing we want to be seeing here, and it's been sort of coming for a long time. It's called modern methods of construction. Everyone says, well, it's not modern, it's been around for donkey's years, but about 70% of new homes social homes in Wales now are being constructed in off-site factories, and the benefits of doing that are really quite straightforward. Better quality control, better performing homes, an ability to really ensure that if you've got that accuracy and kind of precision that you need for high precision, buildings. Someone said that you wouldn't build an aircraft in a field, but that's what we've been doing for decades. We haven't been building houses in a field, so getting that shift is really important. But the benefits you get from that also are these are just get good jobs. If I was able to show you a map now, I'd show you a pin of Wales of something like 25 factories going from quite small to reasonable size operations across Wales, not just the M4 corridor. So in other words, in exactly the places we need this economic activity. And then when you come to things like workforce, we've got a workforce which is aging, tends to be male. The opportunities in these networks in off-site sector are it's an open door for more diversity, which is what we need to be seeing. Get this right, and we can start seeing costs stabilizing and coming down, particularly if we get that economy of repetition I spoke about earlier, and we just start doing things better and better and better, and that's what we've got to get. That's what we've got to get better at doing.
Thank you, Steve. Abigail, sorry, I don't know if you heard the question earlier, but I'm going to change it slightly. So, what's needed to ensure households are informed, supported, and engaged? We've said about the organisations available, but how do we get people engaging with these organisations? How do we get, that message across that households, need to get in touch with you guys and other organisations?
Yeah, so I think, it's really important that households are aware of what is available to them. I think that's sometimes kind of the problem, because there's, been lots of different schemes, such as ECO and kind of GBIS, that people might not be aware about, that they're kind of eligible for. So it's really important that those sort of schemes are communicated to people. So I think there needs to be, or we kind of call for kind of a national awareness campaign of net zero that is then kind of translated into local approaches of what's available for people in different areas, and also really tailoring that approach as well, because one message won't resonate with one group of people and another message won't resonate with another. So really understanding who we're talking to and what's available for that particular person is really important for motivating them to take action, because everyone has kind of different means of action. I think one thing we haven't touched on is the price of electricity is really off-putting for people getting a heat pump, and that very much sits with UK government as something that we've been calling for a long time, to really shift the levies off of electricity, which makes electricity much more expensive than gas, and is kind of a disincentive for people installing a heat pump. So if the UK government hopefully sets out its intentions to do that in the Warm Homes Plan, which should be published by the end of the year, that should hopefully make the heat pumps much more attractive, because there's lots of really great things in Wales and things on offer for people to take advantage of. The boiler upgrade scheme, the Green Homes Wales scheme, Nest for low income households that might be eligible for heat pumps and insulation to lower their energy bills. There's lots of things that are on offer. It's just some of the policy choices around it that need to be kind of forwarded.
Great, thank you for all the answers to the questions. They're really informative and very interesting. So if we're looking ahead, this is a question to all of you. What's your vision for housing in Wales by 2030 and beyond 2050? Do you think we're going to get there? What's your take on this?
Shall I go first? That's a hard question to answer, Jo, to be honest.
It's a very hard question.
So I think it's a huge challenge. had 20 years of trying to improve the carbon footprints of homes, and we've sort of scratched the surface. New build is easier, I think, because you can mandate it. Retrofit is much harder, and I don't even like the word retrofit because I think it tends to put people off. The social housing sector, you can throw government money at to a certain extent, and you could change that. I think the balance of the housing stock, and that's the stuff that exists rather than the stuff that's being built, or a new build rather. That sector is really challenging. So you sort of have to start with what can you do that's cost effective, etc., etc. So I just take one example. Take a house up in one of the valleys above Bridgend. Doesn't really matter which one, and it could be any of the other mining valleys, to be honest. The value of that house is about 70, 80, 90,000 pounds. The cost of retrofitting it with stuff which allows you to put a heat pump in and save money is probably 50,000 pounds. So that's just not going to happen without some other program that says, actually, this is a long-term asset base for the country. We need to put money into this sector in a proper way. And I'm not saying we've got a magic bullet, because we certainly don't. But that is a challenge. And then my final comment on that is making sure that people who build private housing, new private housing, are built to the same standards that the social housing landlords. And what you'll get is a lot of bleating about, oh, it's too expensive, people can't afford it, blah, 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 blah. It's capital cost up front versus a long-term operating cost. And for a householder, it's much more important, the long-term operating costs, because if you're spending 1,000 a year or 1,500 a year on heating, it's a big difference over 25 years. So I haven't really answered your question, Joe, because I don't really know. I don't think we get very far in the next 5 years. I think it is the 20 years after where we absolutely have to solve this, and we have to have a totally decarbonised system. Exactly how we do that, I think, I'm not sure yet. And I think one thing that solves all is unlikely to work. It's going to be a multitude of things we have to do that. And that makes the world difficult for politicians because it's complex and woolly and and they like simple messages. I've rambled on enough. I'll stop.
Abigail, what
So
about you?
I completely agree with what Simon was saying about the next 5 years is absolutely crucial for then setting us up for that longer term kind of change from kind of the kind of 20-year mark. And I guess these 5 years are really crucial for turning that ambition into action. Because the Welsh Government has a really ambitious target to install 580,000 heat pumps by 2035, which is only 10 years away. But if they're kind of pull the levers that we've kind of talked about in this session, that then it's happened in other countries. It can happen as long as all the things that we've kind of talked about today, like finance options, advice, trust in for households. It can happen and roll those out. And I guess also really importantly, we know that recent government figures, Welsh government figures, show that fuel poverty is at 25% in Wales from October 2024. So going back to that first theme that we kind of touched on that twin track approach of solving fuel poverty and decarbonisation is really important. There's such a huge opportunity to do that through lots of the themes we've been exploring today. So I think it's very challenging, but if ambition is really turned into action at pace and scale, I think it can really set Welsh Government kind of on a really positive footing.
Steve, do you have anything to add to that?
In terms of a vision, I mean, I think we have got the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act. It is impossible to lead a good life if you don't have a home that is secure, affordable, healthy, and that we've got to hold that tight as a vision. We really have. It is a foundational thing that we all need. None of us can lead a good life without this. And and I do think that the other part about the vision is actually, if we build on, I think Simon used the word assets so far. If we build on the assets we've got in terms of, companies, potential workforce, the natural resources we've got in our forests and through our companies, and we do that really intelligently, I think we've got a fantastic opportunity here. Yeah, in the new build space, I do agree. I do think it's easier than the retrofit space. Forgive me if I go off on one here, but I think we have most of the levers that we need to do the right thing when it comes to new homes. What stops us is actually ourselves and our ambition. So I do think this is about stepping up now. It has never been harder to build new homes now with cost increases and what have you, and shrinking contractor pools and all the sorts of and lack of skills. But it's within our gift and our imagination. We're a creative country. We're a creative people. We can do this. We really can. I think the opportunities. Where I'd like to be would be, for my grandsons to be naturally thinking about this being a career opportunity as one which just flies off the page. Why wouldn't I want to be involved in helping to provide one of the most essential services for my communities in Wales? Why wouldn't we want to be using more Welsh timber in our new homes? Why wouldn't we want to be doing these things? And using the most effective technologies to live the good life we need to lead.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Right, I think I'm going to go over to the Q&A via the audience chat box. And I'm just going to go up to the top and try and get through as many as I can. And this one, I'm not quite sure who to give this one to. It's we have 3 EV points 2013 onwards. We've upgraded 5 times, and because we're not VAT registered, cannot access any grant funding for small medium enterprises. From John Whitehead, does anybody have an answer to that? Is there funding available for small businesses?
Often not, to be honest. VAT is a real question here. Domestic households don't have VAT, but if you put a community in and the community owns the PV, then the community scheme has to pay VAT. So actually solving the VAT question is something that's worth doing. In terms of funding for SMEs, it's very local, I think, to be honest. And there are schemes like what was the Shared Prosperity Fund or whatever in the past, and whatever comes after that, which sometimes funds SMEs, but most of the time doesn't. So.
Okay, I hope that answered the question for you, John. I've got a question from Paul Allen. It says, can we map out all good real-life case studies which is delivered well and share them across Wales? Now, I know as far as sort of social landlord schemes, things like ORP, we have to provide case studies for this. I'm not so familiar with the case studies on the private sector, so please, if you have any that you'd like to share, please do so.
Yeah, we could go. There's Community Energy Wales and organisations like that. So there are networks that are there, and it's pulling it together in place. So I think it's a pretty good idea, honest. Sorry, Steve, I think I cut across you.
In addition to case studies, just cutting back to the conversation with Sarah earlier on, I do think we are massively underutilising the where we've made investments in, for example, low energy homes, and we haven't really engaged residents enough there to say, look, would you be prepared to share your story? Would you be prepared to open your house up, for an afternoon with some tea and cakes and just show people around and take the questions that people who maybe just want to ask questions? We don't do anywhere near that. So case studies are great, and we need more of them, and we don't do it very well, I don't think. But I think it's more about getting people to go see, talk, understand, ask questions.
100%.
The Passive House Trust, sorry, Passive House Trust have this as one of their programs. Sorry, Abigail, and I think we should look at a Welsh program around this. Sorry.
No, I just wanted to agree with, I think the Visit a Heat Pump network programme is fantastic. And we have something similar that we run in Scotland called the Green Homes Network, which is similar, but doesn't just focus on heat pumps, but also focuses on different other technologies. So solar panels, insulation. So like you said, people can go into someone's homes, feel that it's much warmer, realise that it's from, you know, extra insulation or the heat pump that's been running on a lower temperature all day. I think you're right. It's just kind of normalising the technology, because heat pumps to a lot of people are still kind of a very alien technology, and kind of, you know, you can hear some bad media stories that will kind of put you off if you are thinking about it in the first place. So I think having those being really accessible and communicated widely so that people can just go and visit, because, you know, it's well known that, you know, if your neighbour gets something, then that sometimes influences someone to then kind of copy them and do the same. So it's that same sort of concept. I think something like that can really be powerful and definitely should be built upon.
Okay, thank you, Abigail. At the end of the session, are you guys okay to put stuff in the chat box as well, any links that you feel relevant to some of these questions? The next question is from Catherine Morris. Would someone be able to speak about appropriate retrofit case by case, appropriate insulation solutions with follow-up, not just install and leave? And I think we've already covered that. So if we could put the links in for those case studies, I think that would answer that question. I hope that's all right, Catherine. We've got a question for Simon. It's a bit of a big one. It says, do you plan to roll out any exciting shared group loop projects in Wales as you have in Rosendale? If yes, where? If no, why? And that's from Gareth Farr, Head of Heat Mining Remediation Authority.
Yeah, so I did answer that a bit further down in the chat. We're looking at Bridgend at the moment, and the terraced housing in the Bridgend County Borough. We're also talking at the moment to the Cardiff Capital Region Local Area Energy Plan Coordination Group about what would work in other parts of CCR. And then we're also talking to some of the councils down in Southwest Wales about these sorts of things. So we're not quite ready to implement things. We're still working on all the, I know I'm using a European word, modality. So I can't think of a good English word for that. But we're just about to start the process of recruiting the organisation that will do the work in Bridgend. So that next 6 months we should get through that process, and we'll start to build that. So it was a good question, and of course for Gareth's point of view, a lot of where we're going to go play is on the mine, is on the old coal measures areas. So it's linked to the mining. So there is a piece to use here that you used to work in the mines, and now you can have heat from the mines. I think it's a very strong message for those communities that were mining communities, in, you know, not just in South Wales, but it could be Wrexham or other places.
Okay, I've got a question from Heather Hanson for Abigail, who works at community-based charity. Is there anywhere I can access info posters, flyers to share information of what's available with my community?
Yes, so our Nest scheme definitely has all of these available. So I've just put my email in the chat, and if anyone else on the call also is interested, please get in touch, and I can put you in touch with our Nest colleagues, because they're really keen to kind of partner with as many organisations as we can.
Okay, thank you. There are a couple of other questions in the chat box, and if panelists, would you be happy to answer them in the chat box? I'm mindful that we're running out of time. But as we wrap up, what's one action you'd encourage our audience to take away today, whether as individuals, communities, businesses, or policy makers? How can each of us contribute to making net zero homes a reality?
On the grounds that I've been the first to react each time, I'll complete the cycle, if you don't mind. We all live in houses. We can all be ambassadors for our communities. And we have people who work for us who also have that process. I think it's walking the walk as well as talking the talk, you know. And I think it's easy to do stuff at work and then go home and it's a different world and you don't think about it. So actually bringing that together and actually showing, well, I've done it and this is the benefit I've had from it, etc., etc., really works. Communities are really strong. So actually getting community champions in the villages and in the towns helps. And it's harder in Cardiff, or Swansea, than it would be in a village because people don't know each other so much. But actually, there are community aggregators in that process. I know Annie Tegg is working with the Bangladeshi community doing energy efficiency work in their houses. So there are multipliers in that process. But yeah, my message is take your day job home and do it at home. Live what you preach.
Thank you, Simon. Abigail.
So I guess for me, for households, I'd say go and look on what's available for you, because there are things out there that aren't, maybe as well advertised as they could be. There's, as I said earlier, there's our Nest program where you can ring our advisors and have some advice on what you could do to your home to make it warmer or lower your bills. And if you're eligible for free home improvements, really encourage people to explore that. And also use the Climate Action Wales website. I'm in England and I wish we had something like that in England. So I think it's really like a good platform for Welsh Government to build upon. I guess that feeds into what I'd say to policymakers in Wales, in that, the ambition is there, the strategies are there to take us to the next level. It's just making sure we do it at pace and scale and kind of taking in all of the kind of recommendations that we said today.
Thank you, Abigail and Steve. I'm mindful that a lot of this discussion today has been about retrofits, but what would you say we can take away from today?
Well, I just go back to the initial point about this. It's the old phrase, isn't it? If you want to go fast, you kind of go on your own, but if you want to go further, you go together. And I do think it's kind of, it is about all of us thinking about where collaboration makes sense and where it's worth investing in with, particularly to unlock the learning and the sharing that we need to ensure that we learn from not only our own mistakes, but other people's mistakes. And we celebrate when things are working. But yeah, collaboration. I mean, if people in the room are connected with the Ynghyd landlords, really keen to make contact with you and sort of update where we are with that. And if you're, I'm not just so the actual website, just put something in the chat. But yeah, very happy just to continue the conversation offline. Thank you. Collaboration. We are stronger together.
Yeah, I think that's it, isn't it? Collaborating and engaging and informing. It seems to be the main topics, the main key points. So I'd just like to say thank you to all panelists and everyone watching for your time and insights today. Stefan Powell will now join the stage to introduce our bilingual polls. Our speakers, you're welcome to stay on stage for the panel, but you're free to leave if required. So thank you and enjoy the rest of Wales Climate Week. Diolch yn fawr.
Thank you.